You wake in darkness, though the smell tells you morning is near. It is not the crisp air of dawn, but the heavy, sour perfume of your own life, a smell that clings to you like another skin. Damp straw rustles beneath you as you shift, and something small scurries away in the darkness. You can't see it, but you know it's there. They're always there. Your mother's cough cuts through the stillness, a wet, tearing sound that seems to scrape her lungs raw. She doesn't rise. She doesn't have the strength. Beside you, your little sister whimpers in her sleep, her forehead slick with sweat, her hair knotted into damp ropes. Her breath smells faintly sweet, like rotting fruit, a sign you've learned to fear. Your father groans and turns over, releasing a breath so foul it stings your eyes. His teeth, those that remain, are black stumps. His gums bleed freely, leaving dried brown streaks at the corners of his mouth. You itch. You always itch. The bites are on your scalp, under your arms, along the soft skin of your waist. You've long since stopped picking at them. Scratching only makes them weep, and the sores never heal. They join the map of old wounds your body carries, each one a scar of survival. Somewhere outside, a rooster crows. You know without looking that the horizon is still black. The rooster crows when it pleases, or perhaps when it too feels hunger gnawing at its belly. Hunger is a constant here, a companion as familiar as the lice in your hair or the rats in the walls. This is northern France, the year of our Lord 1347, the year before the sickness, that sickness, would sweep through every home, leaving no family untouched. But that's still in the future. For now, there is only the present, a world where the idea of being clean belongs to the realm of saints and angels, not to people like you. The roof above you sags with damp rot, the thatch blackened in patches where rainwater seeps through. In summer, it will swarm with insects. In winter, ice will form along its edges, dripping onto your bed in the night. You share this single room with every part of your life, your family, the smoke from last night's fire, the smell of your own bodies, and the small, sharp stink of the goat tethered in the corner. It's not unusual to keep animals indoors. It keeps them safe from thieves, and their warmth is welcome on freezing nights. But it means that every breath you take is thick with dust, manure, and the sweet, sour smell of unwashed wool. Your clothing, if it can be called that, is a tunic so stiff with sweat and grease that it holds its shape when you peel it away. You slept in it, as you always do. You will work in it until it rots from your body. Water could wash some of this away, but water is not your friend. Water must be fetched from the river or the communal well, both of which carry sickness as surely as they carry life. You've heard of children who bathed in the river and never came home, their bodies found days later, bloated and pale. You've also seen the fever take people who drank from the well. The elders say you should boil the water, but wood is dearer than silver here, and you would sooner burn your own roof than waste fuel on making water taste less like earth and rot. The nearest thing to cleanliness is the morning chill that seeps into your bones when you step outside. The air smells different there, sharp, cold, untainted by the press of bodies, but it never lasts. Soon the smoke of cooking fires, the reek of manure, and the wet metal tang of the smithy will fill it. Soon the whole village will smell like one single breath, stale, sour, and hot. You do not know that people elsewhere live differently. You cannot imagine a world where your skin could be warm and dry, where your hair could be free of vermin, where the water could be clear. You cannot imagine these things because no one you know has ever experienced them. To you, this is not filth. This is simply life. The day begins in the dark. Your father will walk to the fields, your mother will tend the fire, and you will work until your body aches so much that sleep comes without dreams. Tomorrow will be the same. The only measure of time is the turning of the seasons, and the changes in the kinds of dirt that cling to you. For now you rise from the straw, shake the lice from your collar, and rub your arms to drive away the cold. The rooster crows again. A thin gray light begins to creep under the door. It is another day in medieval Europe, and survival, not cleanliness, is your only goal. Water. It should be life's simplest gift. Yet here in your village, it is as much a bringer of death as it is a source of survival. The river lies half a mile from your door, a brown ribbon winding sluggishly through the fields. It carries more than water. It carries every secret, every sickness of the village. The elders say the river has always been there, as constant as the hills, as certain as the harvest. It is where women kneel to scrub linen with soap made from wood ash and animal fat, the suds drifting downstream in cloudy streaks. It is where the animals drink, their hooves stirring the silt, their dung vanishing into the current. And it is where the waste from every home, chamber pots, midden heaps, and worse, is dumped without a thought. When Guillaume de Montfort shoulders his wooden yoke and trudges to the water's edge, he is not thinking about the small lives that swim invisible in its depths. He is thinking about the weight of the buckets he must carry back, and the dozen other tasks waiting for him. His wife, Marguerite, will use that water for cooking, for drinking, for wiping the dirt from the children's faces. It will stain their lips with its earthy taste, but it is all they have. The buckets return home sloshing with water the color of weak ale. Not metaphorically brown, but thick with silt and the faint green shimmer of algae. Some days, Guillaume will set the buckets down to rest overnight, letting the mud sink to the bottom, skimming from the top with care. But most days there is no time for patience. Thirst does not wait for the water to clear. You've heard whispers that stagnant water breeds disease, that running water is safer. And so the village drinks from the river, believing the current carries away the danger. In truth, the current only delivers it more quickly from one home to another. You do not know that the same running water that cools your lips may have washed over the body of a sick child upstream only hours before. On rare occasions, the water is boiled. This is a costly choice. Fuel, wood or peat, is precious, and every twig burned for boiling water is a twig that will not warm your home in winter. Boiling is a luxury, reserved for the sick or for a newborn's first days. For everyone else, the answer to thirst is not water at all, but ale. Ale is the true drink of the peasantry, weak and cloudy, brewed from barley and oats. The brewing process, though no one understands why, kills much of what lurks in the water. Even children drink it from wooden mugs at breakfast. A family may go through 3 to 5 gallons in a single day, their bellies warm and heavy with it, not from drunkenness, but from safety. In ale there is life. In water there is risk. But ale will not clean you. It cannot wash the dirt from your hands or rinse the sweat from your hair. When you want to scrub yourself, and scrub is a generous word, you must face the river again. The same river that holds life and death in equal measure, the same river where goats stand ankle deep, where women slap shirts against rocks, where the oily sheen of kitchen waste swirls in rainbow patterns on the surface. You learn quickly not to think too much about what touches your lips or your skin. You learn to see the river not as it is, but as you must. A gift from God like the rain or the soil, too vital to question. Because here in 1347, there is no other choice. And so you drink and you live, at least for now. Soap exists in your world, but it is not for you. It is for merchants, for wealthy townsfolk, for those whose hands do not touch the soil every day. For a peasant, soap is not merely rare, it is an extravagance, a thing glimpsed perhaps at a market stall or smelled in the hands of a passing tradesman. Its scent as strange and luxurious as foreign spices. The making of soap is an art, and Agnes the soap maker knows it well. Her workshop in Canterbury is a place of bubbling vats and sharp smells, wood ash, boiling water, rendered fat from pigs or sheep. She stirs the mixture with a stick, the fat binding with the lye to form a pale, greasy paste that will harden into bars. Her soap is sought after by the merchant class, the wealthy who can afford the expense. She delivers it wrapped in cloth, stamped with her mark, and sold for more than a peasant's family earns in weeks. But Agnes herself, she cannot afford to use her own product. Her hands are raw from the lye, her hair matted into ropes, her skin crawling with lice. A court record from her trial for theft describes her as verminous, with hair so clotted it seemed one mass. She sells cleanliness she will never know. For most peasants, the closest thing to washing comes in the form of sand. Coarse, gritty, plentiful. Sand scours the skin, stripping away the top layer of dirt. But it also tears at the flesh, leaving scratches that fester in days. A too enthusiastic scrubbing can leave a man bleeding at the elbows and knees. These wounds are invitations to infection, and infection is a constant predator. If sand is unavailable, there is water alone. Cold, cloudy, often fetched from the same source that carries away the village's waste. The washing is done quickly, with no soap and no thought for sterility, not because peasants are careless, but because they have no other tools. In summer, perhaps a plunge into a pond or stream. In winter, the effort is so dangerous that many simply forego it entirely. Soap making is not just expensive, it is labor-intensive. To gather the animal fat, a family must slaughter a pig or sheep, an act most cannot afford more than once or twice a year. Even then, the fat is too valuable to waste. It is needed for cooking or as fuel for lamps. Wood ash must be leached for hours to extract lye, a process requiring large containers, time, and a safe space to work. These are not things a peasant woman can spare in the midst of planting, harvesting, or tending to her household's endless needs. The rare times soap is made in a peasant household, it is hoarded for the most important tasks, perhaps to scrub a newborn before baptism or to clean the dead before burial. For daily life, sand and water must suffice. There are whispers of other cleaning agents, crushed herbs for scent, clay for oil absorption, even fermented urine for bleaching linen. But for the body, the choices are few and they are cruel. To be clean in the 14th century is not simply to be fortunate, it is to be wealthy, to have leisure, to have access to materials and time that peasants will never see. And so the dirt clings, a second skin, unavoidable, unshakable, and as much a part of you as your own flesh. To a peasant, washing the whole body is not a casual act. It is an event, a costly, exhausting, and often dangerous undertaking. In your world, it is more likely to harm you than to help you. Consider Marie Ducy, a woman from a small village near Reims in the year 1289. The spring thaws over, Easter approaches, and with it the unspoken expectation that she should make herself presentable for the holiest day of the year. For weeks, she has saved precious scraps of wood and peat, each one set aside from cooking fires, hoarded in a small pile in the corner of her home. Wood is not just fuel, it is warmth, survival. To burn it for water instead of food is a sacrifice. At last, on the day before Easter, she begins. The wooden tub, hauled out from storage, is set in the middle of the single room she shares with her family and their animals. She pours in bucket after bucket of river water, each one heavy, fetched from the same place where laundry is beaten on the rocks. Goats stand ankle deep, and waste drifts downstream. When the tub is full, she lights the fire. The precious wood burns quickly, too quickly. There will be no boiling, only enough heat to make the water tepid. She has no soap. Instead, she uses coarse sand, scooping it into her palm and working it over her skin. It bites and grates, scraping away not just dirt, but the thin protection her skin has built against the outside world. The water turns brown almost instantly, floating with hair, skin, and sediment. The longer she scrubs, the more the water cools. When she steps out, her skin is red, raw, and stinging. The damp air wraps around her like ice. She has no towel, just the same clothes she wore into the bath. They are damp, filthy, and heavy, but they are all she has. Within days, the scratches on her arms and legs swell with heat, the skin around them tight and hot. Fever follows. She will recover, but she will remember. The experience will teach her what every peasant learns. It is safer to remain dirty. This is why most peasants wash fully only once or twice a year, often tied to religious festivals. Easter, Christmas, perhaps a wedding or baptism. The rest of the time, cleanliness is reduced to wiping the face and hands with a damp cloth or splashing water on the feet before bed. It is not that they are indifferent to dirt. They understand that a certain kind of filth can kill, but their options are cruelly limited. Clean water is scarce, soap rarer still, and warmth precious. The church preaches that purity is a virtue, but physical cleanliness is often secondary to spiritual cleanliness. Monks and priests may bathe more often in their well-supplied monasteries, but they rarely teach peasants how to do the same. And even if they did, the peasants could not afford the means. For you in the 14th century, the decision is simple. You stay as you are. The dirt is part of you now, a shield against the cold, and perhaps against the danger that comes when you strip it away. In a world like this, washing is not the beginning of health. It can be the first step toward your grave. Your hair is not simply hair. It is a kingdom, a swarming realm of tiny lives that claim you as their home. In the 14th century, lice are not merely common, they are universal. From the humblest serf to the crowned head of a king, no one is free of them. The only difference is that the wealthy have servants who can spend hours picking them out, while the poor have only their own hands and too much work to spare the time. Your own hair hangs heavy, darkened with grease, stiff with the dust of the fields. It smells faintly of smoke and sweat, and beneath your fingers you can feel the small bumps of lice clinging to the shafts. When they bite, the itch comes in waves. You scratch without thinking until the skin breaks and the blood crusts into scabs. These open sores become warm hollows where infection can take root. Isabella Fareham of Yorkshire knows this well. In 1356, she sits in church, her head bowed in prayer. From the outside, she is no different from anyone else in the pews. But the local priest will later note in the manor records that her hair moved, even as she sat still. Lice crawled so thickly along her scalp and temples that other worshippers glanced away, not in shock, but in quiet distraction. No one thought it scandalous. It was merely worth noting. You have no scissors, and even if you did, you might hesitate to cut your hair. Long hair is valued in many villages, tied to ideas of beauty, strength, or religious devotion. The saints in the church windows all wear their hair long. To shear it off is an act usually reserved for penance, mourning, or extreme need. There are remedies for lice passed down from grandmother to mother. One is to smear the hair with animal fat, believing it will suffocate the pests. Another is to crush herbs like rosemary or pennyroyal into a paste and rub it into the scalp, hoping the smell will drive the vermin away. Some even burn small tufts of their own hair to kill the eggs clinging to the roots. These methods rarely work. More often, they leave your head slick and rancid, and the lice remain. The pests do not live only in your hair. They infest the seams of your clothing, lay eggs in the folds where the fabric meets the skin, and spread from person to person like whispers in the dark. Children pass them easily, their heads pressed together in play or sleep. Lovers share them in the night. Families swap them endlessly, a constant exchange no one can avoid. Other creatures join the feast. Fleas leap from animals to humans, biting in the tender hollows of the body. Mites burrow under the skin, leaving winding red trails that itch until you bleed. The scratching never stops. You do not think of your hair as something to style or display. It is something to endure. A covering you must carry, no different than the tunic on your back or the soil beneath your nails. When you lie down at night, the movement in your hair continues, a constant reminder that you are never truly alone. Here in the middle of the 14th century, your scalp is not just part of your body, it is a landscape, and you are its unwilling host. In the world you inhabit, your teeth are already betraying you long before your hair turns gray. By your late 20s, they are worn to stumps. By 40, they may be gone entirely. This is not because of sugar. In fact, you may never taste anything sweet in your life beyond a piece of honeycomb, but because of what you eat every day and how you eat it. Your bread is the main culprit, coarse, heavy, baked from flour ground between millstones that shed tiny fragments of grit into every loaf. That grit works against your teeth like sandpaper, slowly filing them down to the gum. Meat, when you have it, is stringy and tough, requiring endless chewing. Nuts are cracked with your molars, bones are gnawed for the marrow, and vegetables are pulled from the soil with dirt still clinging to their roots. Every bite carries the possibility of grinding your teeth just a little further away. There is no such thing as a toothbrush. Some people chew on the ends of sticks until they fray into rough bristles, rubbing them across their teeth in the hope of cleaning them. Others use scraps of linen. Most simply do nothing. Mouths are left to rot in peace, and the rot is relentless. Gum disease begins quietly. with swelling and bleeding when you eat. Soon the gums recede, exposing more of the tooth, making them loose. The pain sharpens with the cold bite of ale, the sting of salted meat. Then one morning a tooth wobbles free in your mouth and you spit it into your palm. There is no dentist to replace it, no plate to restore your smile. You swallow soft pottage for weeks and adjust to a life without chewing properly. Roger, the miller of Essex, knew this life well. By the time he reached his 40th year, the court rolls describe him as having no teeth left at all, his gums swollen and infected, his meals reduced to broths and mash. He was not exceptional. He was the rule. Breath in the medieval village is a weapon all its own. Francesco de Marco, a Florentine merchant visiting London in 1378, wrote to his family that, "The common people here have breath so foul it could knock a man senseless." He took to breathing through his mouth when conducting business, though he complained that it brought its own torments in the stench-filled air of the city. Infections of the mouth can kill. You do not know the word sepsis, but you have seen strong men reduced to feverish, trembling shadows within days of a toothache. The swelling creeps along the jaw. The breath grows shallow, and before long the body lies still. A small sore in the gum can open the door to death. And yet in your world, tooth pain is not a reason to stop working. You still harvest grain, still mend clothes, still walk miles to fetch water. You learn to bear it because there is no other choice. Pain is simply another part of living, a constant reminder that your body's breaking down long before you're ready to leave it behind. You carry more life inside you than you ever see. Your body is a walking country, inhabited by creatures that feed, breed, and die within its borders. Some bite from the outside, like the lice and fleas you can see, but others live deep within, hidden until their presence becomes too great to ignore. Intestinal worms are common companions. They arrive with your food, in the meat that was not cooked long enough, in the vegetables washed in river water, in the bread baked from grain chewed by rats. You do not know they are there until your belly swells, your hunger deepens, and your body weakens despite every meal. Children's stomachs often bulge with them, tight and round under their tunics, the rest of their limbs thin and bird-like. There are cases you still remember hearing about as a child, whispered stories meant to frighten you into eating slowly or avoiding certain foods. One such story is recorded by Brother Albertus, a monk physician in 1295. He writes of a woman whose belly swelled so much she was thought to be pregnant, though she swore she had not lain with a man. When they purged her with bitter herbs, the worms she expelled filled a bucket, writhing like a nest of snakes. This was no allegory, it was the plain truth of medieval life. And then there is the itch. Not the surface scratching of lice, but a deeper, more maddening itch that lives under the skin. Scabies mites burrow unseen, carving winding tunnels that redden and swell. You scratch until you bleed, but the itch never stops. Margaret Della, a peasant from Normandy in 1334, was described in monastery charity records as so afflicted that she had stripped her skin from crown to heel with her nails. Her clothing, the monks noted, was stiff with blood and pus. They gave her shelter, but kept her apart from the other petitioners, afraid the affliction might spread. You don't understand the science of these invaders. You've been told scabies comes from corrupted blood, and worms from bad humors or curses. Remedies range from the foul to the fatal, smearing wounds with dung, drinking infusions of poisonous plants, or bleeding yourself in hopes the sickness will drain away. There is no rest from them. They live with you in the day. They follow you into the fields. They sleep beside you on the straw. They do not need your permission. They are part of you, as constant as your heartbeat, as sure as the sun rising over another day, in a body that belongs to more than just yourself. For the women of your village, the body is a battlefield long before childbirth takes its toll. Each month brings a private misery, and with it the threat of sickness no one talks about. There is no cloth sold for the purpose, no clean linen set aside. Menstrual blood is caught with whatever rags can be spared, torn from old tunics, worn thin from years of use. These rags are rarely washed properly, for the same reasons nothing else is. Clean water is scarce, soap is a luxury, and fuel for boiling is too precious to waste. Often they are rinsed in the same river that carries waste, then dried stiff in the sun. If a woman lives with others, a mother, sisters, daughters, the rags may be shared between them. The infections they carry pass unseen from one body to another. Some rags serve double duty. In a home with only a handful of cloth to its name, the same piece might be used to swaddle an infant, bind a wound, wipe a cooking pot, and then serve again during a woman's bleeding days. To speak of this openly would invite shame, not because the women are careless, but because the reality of their bodies is something no one wishes to name aloud. In Norfolk in 1301, a peasant woman named Eleanor Kemp confessed to her parish priest that she was unclean 12 days each month, for the rags I must use breed corruption. She told him they caused such pain she could neither sit nor stand without wincing. Still, she dared not discard them. There was no replacement. 2 years later, she died in childbirth, her body too weakened to survive the fever that followed. Whether the infection began with those rags, no one could say. Beyond menstruation, there is the daily struggle of keeping a woman's body proper in the eyes of the church and her community. The church preaches modesty, but it offers no practical guidance for the realities of a peasant woman's hygiene. Vaginal infections are common, made worse by constant labor in damp clothing, by squatting in fields fertilized with waste, and by the endless contact with contaminated water. To complain is to be told to endure. A woman's suffering is expected, part of her role, as much as tending the hearth or bearing children. And so the infections, the rashes, the fevers are born in silence. Women pass their wisdom to their daughters in murmured instructions, which herbs may soothe the pain, which leaves might help staunch the blood. It is knowledge born of necessity and often paid for with health, even with life. In your time, these things are not hidden because they are rare. They are hidden because they are constant, and speaking of them changes nothing. For a medieval peasant woman, childbirth is not a moment of joy so much as a trial to be survived, if survival is granted at all. Every birth is a gamble, and the odds are not in your favor. The midwife arrives, as she always does, with her hands and whatever cloth she can carry. She is respected in the village, for she holds the knowledge of life's most dangerous threshold. But her tools are the same as they were for every other birth she has attended. A knife for cutting the cord, strips of linen, unwashed because soap is costly, and perhaps a small pouch of herbs. There is no notion of sterilization, no boiling of water to cleanse the instruments. What worked for the last birth will do for this one, even if the last child did not live. Alice Miller of Canterbury was the only midwife for miles in 1289. She had delivered dozens of babies, though not all lived, nor did all the mothers. Witnesses later testified in a legal case that they had never seen her wash her hands, summer or winter. This was not unusual. In a life where every drop of clean water must be carried, it is not wasted on something invisible like germs, a word that does not yet exist. Matilda Shepherd, a peasant woman under Alice's care, lost 4 children in infancy. Her 5th child lived only long enough to wail once before going still. Matilda herself died within days, feverish and delirious, the dreaded childbed fever. No one understood that it was the same fever that had carried off other mothers in the village, spread by the very hands meant to help them. The birthing place is rarely private. It is the same one-room house where the family eats, sleeps, and works. Children peer from corners, neighbors crowd in, and the smell of blood mingles with smoke from the hearth and the sour stink of unwashed bodies. The floor beneath the woman is dirt or straw, often damp, sometimes shared with livestock. The bed, if there is one, is piled with blankets that have seen years of use and have never been boiled clean. If the birth is hard, the remedies are born of desperation. Strong drink to dull the pain, tight bindings to keep the womb in place, bleeding to release the bad humors. Prayers to saints, whispered between screams. Sometimes a priest is called, not for the mother's comfort, but to prepare for the possibility that she or her child will need last rites. In this world, childbirth is as much about death as it is about life. And yet women face it again and again because the survival of the family and the village depends on it. Each new child is another pair of hands for the fields, another hope against the constant threat of famine and disease. And so the midwife's hands, however unwashed, are trusted, because there is no other choice. In your world, there is no polite way to speak of human waste, because there is no polite way to manage it. There are no privies for most peasants, no cesspools hidden underground, no sewer systems carrying filth away. Waste stays close to where it is made, a constant presence in the life of the village. Some households dig shallow pits outside their doors, little more than a hole in the earth surrounded by weeds. Others designate a patch of ground just beyond the fields, where the soil is damp and the flies gather in swarms. In summer, the stench carries on the wind. In winter, the cold hardens everything, but does not hide it. For those who have a chamber pot, it is a crude clay or wooden vessel used through the night and emptied when the sun rises, often into the same water source from which the household drinks. The records from Whitby, Yorkshire, in 1298 tell of a cesspit serving 12 families that had not been emptied in 3 years. It overflowed into the well they all shared for drinking water. The local lord ordered it cleared, but whether it ever was, no one knows. Toilet paper does not exist. Instead, you might use moss, smooth stones, dry leaves, or, when desperation calls, your bare hand. If water is nearby, you rinse, but soap is too precious to waste on something as common as this. The result is predictable: sores, infections, and the constant risk of spreading disease from one person to another without ever knowing it. The animals contribute their share. Pigs root and wallow where waste lies thick, tracking it into the same yards where children play. Chickens peck at anything that moves, spreading filth with every step. Goats and sheep are tethered close to the house for safety, leaving the ground where they stand soaked and fouled. The air itself carries the smell of it all, not in bursts, but as a steady background note to life. You are so used to it that you barely notice. A traveler might gag, but for you it is the smell of home, as much a part of the village as the smoke from the hearth or the damp of the fields. It is not just unpleasant, it is dangerous. You do not know about bacteria or contamination, but you know that certain fevers pass quickly through a household after the well water takes on a strange taste, or when the pit is too close to the kitchen garden. Yet even knowing this, there is no solution. The cycle continues because it must. Waste in, waste out, over and over again, with no way to truly make it disappear. Here in 1347, waste is not something you can remove from your life. It is a part of the earth you walk on, the water you drink, the food you eat. It is part of you, and you are part of it. What you wear is not so much clothing as it is a second skin. And like your own skin, it is alive with other things. Most peasants own only a single set of garments, worn every day until they fall apart. Washing them is rare, not out of neglect, but because washing means stripping down in the cold and finding a way to dry them before nightfall. In winter, this can be deadly. Your tunic is wool, rough and heavy, woven from yarn spun by hands that had no way to keep it clean in the making. Raw wool still carries lanolin, grease, and the smell of the sheep. It traps every flake of skin, every drop of sweat, every fleck of soil. Over time, it stiffens, becoming so saturated with body oils and dirt that it can stand on its own when removed. The seams are the worst. Stitched with thick, uneven thread, they form warm, hidden tunnels where lice and fleas lay their eggs. You can sit in church and watch your neighbor pick the lice from his collar, crack them between his fingernails, and flick them away without shame. The eggs, nits, cling stubbornly, a pale dusting along the fabric that no amount of shaking will remove. There are no undergarments for you. The wool lies directly against your skin, absorbing every fluid your body produces. Sweat, menstrual blood, pus from sores. Without any barrier, the fabric becomes a living map of your life, stained and stiff with months of wear. The absence of spare clothing means that even when you wash your tunic in the river, slapping it against the rocks, rinsing it in water already brown with silt and waste, you must put it back on while still wet. The cold soaks into your bones, and the damp cloth rubs against your skin until it chafes raw. The lice are undisturbed by this ritual. They cling stubbornly through every dunking, ready to feast again the moment you return to the warmth of your home. The act of making clothes is no cleaner than wearing them. The thread is spun while walking the muddy lanes or sitting by the hearth, dragging along the ground or across the sooty floor. When it is woven into cloth, all the dust, ash, and stray hairs woven and remain part of it forever. Dyes, if you are lucky enough to have them, are often made by soaking plant matter in vats of urine, leaving the finished fabric with a sharp, sour tang that never quite fades. Leather goods are no better. Shoes, if you own them, are patched again and again until the sole is thin as paper and the upper is more whole than hide. The tanning process leaves the leather stiff and oily, and as it softens with wear, it becomes a dark sponge for moisture and filth. Fungal infections flourish in the damp hollows of the shoe, eating away at your skin until it cracks and bleeds. To you, your clothing is a necessity, a shield against the weather. But to the creatures that share your world, lice, fleas, mites, it is a fortress, a place of warmth and safety from which they will never be driven. Step inside your home, and you step into a single room that holds your entire life. There are no corridors, no chambers for sleeping, eating, and working. All happens here in one space. It is not just a shelter from the wind. It is a living thing, breathing with the heat of bodies, the smoke of the hearth, and the constant presence of animals. The walls are wattle and daub, thin branches woven together, smeared with a mixture of mud, straw, and dung. In summer, the walls are alive with insects. Small beetles slip between the branches, spiders spin webs in the corners, and flies drift lazily in the air. In winter, mice and rats find their way into the gaps, their droppings collecting in the dark spaces behind the woven panels. The roof is thatch, a dense layering of reeds or straw. It leaks in heavy rain, sending drips onto the straw mattress where you sleep. Birds nest in the rafters, their calls waking you before dawn, their droppings falling unnoticed into the food pot on the fire. Fleas and mites live in the thatch year-round, falling like dust into your hair and onto your clothes as you work below. The floor is packed earth, no boards, no stone. It absorbs everything, the spills from cooking, the droppings of animals, the waste from sick children. When it rains, the ground softens, turning to mud beneath your feet. In the dry season, it hardens and cracks, sending dust into the air with every step. The dust carries more than dirt. It carries the remnants of every season's sickness. Furniture is sparse if it exists at all. A rough table, perhaps a stool or two, and a chest to store your most precious things. A handful of tools, maybe a bit of fabric saved for mending. There is no cupboard for dishes. Bowls and spoons are kept wherever they can be wedged safely away from the rats. The hearth is the heart of the room, but it is also a source of constant discomfort. The smoke curls up toward a hole in the roof, but it never all escapes. On still days, it hangs thick inside, stinging your eyes and coating the walls in soot. Every breath carries a trace of it into your lungs, leaving you with a cough that never quite fades. At night, the space grows crowded. You, your parents, your siblings, sometimes grandparents too, lie together on a straw mattress or directly on the floor, wrapped in rough wool blankets. In the coldest months, the animals join you indoors. A goat for milk, chickens for eggs, perhaps even a pig for fattening. Their warmth is welcome, but so are their fleas, lice, and smell. This house, with its dirt, its pests, its shared air, is not a place you can ever truly clean, but it is the only thing standing between you and the wind, the rain, and the long dark of the night. It is safety and it is danger, all in the same breath. Life in your village is ruled by the seasons, and so is your filth. Each time of year brings its own burden, a different layer of grime and sickness that settles on the body and in the home. In spring, the thaw comes first. The ground turns to a sucking mud that clings to your feet and hems, tracking inside with every step. The paths between houses dissolve into deep ruts where water pools brown and stagnant. Meltwater seeps into the floor of your home, mixing with the packed earth until it becomes a paste of soil, animal droppings, and the scraps of last winter's refuse. Children splash through it barefoot, their legs streaked with muck, their cuts and scrapes raw from the grit. Summer is the season of life and of swarms. Flies breed in every pile of waste, in every animal pen, in every open pail of water. They land on food, on open wounds, on sleeping faces. Meat turns sour in hours. Cheese sweats and weeps in the heat, drawing clouds of insects. Your own skin becomes a lure. Sweat slicks your body, drawing biting flies to every exposed inch. You work under the sun, and the dirt clings harder with each hour, baking into a film that no cloth can wipe away. Autumn brings the harvest, and with it, exhaustion. Fields demand every hand, every daylight hour. You sleep in your clothes, rising before the sun, eating in the field with fingers still gritty from the soil. The pottage you eat at night tastes faintly of earth, because there is no time to wash your hands properly. Straw from the harvest litters the floor of your home, mingling with the bedding, carrying with it the dust of the fields and the waste from the livestock pens. Then comes winter, the season of stillness, and of air so close and thick it is almost chewable. The cold drives you and your family indoors, huddled together with your animals for warmth. Windows, if you have them, are shuttered tight. Smoke from the fire hangs in the rafters, turning the air gray. No one washes. No. Water freezes in the bucket before it can be used. Straw in the bedding blackens with sweat and spilled ale. The smell of ammonia from urine soaking into the floor. Illness moves quickly now. Coughs turn to fevers, fevers to funerals. In 1315, the Great Famine struck, and winters like that saw entire villages huddling in a single building, 30 or more pressed into a space meant for 5. A priest in Yorkshire wrote that the stench was so strong during one mass he had to step outside to breathe. These were not extraordinary conditions, only an extraordinary number of bodies in one place. And when the season turns, it does not bring relief so much as a change of burdens. Mud replaces frost, flies replace coughs, and the cycle begins again. Here, filth is not an accident of neglect. It is the companion of every month, each season bringing its own share to add to the weight you already carry on your skin. Every task you perform to survive leaves you dirtier than before. Work is not just tiring, it stains you, grinds into your skin, and makes filth a permanent part of your body. Farming is the greatest offender. The fields are fertilized with a mix of animal dung and human waste. You walk barefoot through the furrows in summer, the warm sludge squeezing between your toes. In spring planting, your hands bury seeds into the same soil, your nails packed black, your palms slick with a dampness that never feels clean. There are no gloves to shield you, only skin to endure the contact. Harvest is no cleaner. The grain you cut is often speckled with mold or spotted with mouse droppings. You carry heavy sheaves against your chest, the chaff working under your tunic and scratching the skin until it bleeds. The dust from threshing hangs in the air, mixing with the sweat on your face until it cakes like a mask. You cough it up at night in clumps that taste faintly of rot. Animal care adds its own layer. Pigs roll in their own waste, and when you herd them, their filth coats your legs to the knee. Cows must be milked in stalls thick with manure, the air heavy with the smell of ammonia. Chickens scratch at the floor of the coop, sending up clouds of dust laced with droppings that settle on your hair and clothes. Every day you breathe this in. Every day it clings to you. Food processing is little better. Butchering a pig in the yard means kneeling in the blood and offal as you work. The tools used to slice its flesh are the same knives used for cutting bread and harvesting vegetables, wiped on the nearest cloth or apron. Aprons that are never washed. Meat is salted in open tubs, attracting flies that lay their eggs in the brine, unnoticed until the meat is cooked weeks later. Even brewing ale, the village's safest drink, is not a clean task. Fermenting grain draws every kind of pest, gnats, beetles, even rats, and you stir the brew with the same wooden paddle used for mixing animal feed. No one questions this. Wood is precious, and tools must serve many purposes. In every season, the work stains you in ways that can't be scrubbed away. The black under your nails, the grit on your teeth, the smell in your hair. These are not accidents of a single day, but the accumulation of years. The more you labor, the more your body becomes an archive of every field plowed, every animal tended, every meal prepared in a world where nothing is truly clean. And when the day is done, there is no hot bath waiting, no change of fresh clothes. There is only the same bed, the same tunic, the same layer of grime, now joined by whatever the day's work has added to it. If your work covers you in filth, your gatherings ensure you share it with everyone else. Social life in your village is not just about connection. It is an unending exchange of whatever sickness, parasite, or pest you happen to carry. The church is the heart of community life, and it is always full. On feast days, the air inside is warm and close, heavy with the smell of damp wool, smoke, and the sourness of unwashed bodies. People stand shoulder to shoulder, coughing into their hands, breathing in each other's breath. Communion is taken from a shared cup, the wine carrying traces of every mouth that touched it before yours. No one questions it. It is God's blood, and surely holy enough to cleanse itself. Markets and fairs are more chaotic, but no cleaner. Hundreds gather in a single open space to trade grain, livestock, tools, and cloth. Animals bleat and defecate where they stand, their waste trampled into the mud by the crowd. Food stalls serve pottage or roasted meat from pots that have never been scoured, ladled out by hands that minutes earlier were weighing coins, cutting cloth, or wiping sweat from a brow. Pilgrimages bring strangers from far-off places, along with the diseases they carry. These journeys are cramped and exhausting, with travelers sleeping side by side on the floors of inns, barns, or roadside chapels. If one pilgrim coughs, soon the whole group coughs. Lice pass from cloak to cloak in the night. Blisters on the feet fester as the miles wear on, and the pus finds its way into the communal washing basins, if there is water at all. Even celebrations are dangerous. At weddings, the whole village eats from shared trenchers, fingers dipping into the same meat or bread. Alayas pass from person to person. Dancing sends sweat flying from one face to another. Laughter, song, and shouting all stir the air in the crowded hall, making it thick with heat, smell, and contagion. Funerals are worse. The dead are often laid out in the same room where the family sleeps, the smell masked with flowers or herbs. Mourners lean close to kiss the brow or touch the hands of the deceased. If the cause of death was a sickness, and often it was, the exchange between the living and the dead is invisible but certain. In a small village, you cannot isolate yourself. The rhythm of life demands you be present in the market, in the fields, in the church. Your absence would be noticed. Your absence would bring questions, and your absence might even be taken as an insult. So you go into the crowd, into the closeness, and you carry with you whatever lives in your body, knowing you will bring back whatever lives in theirs. Here in 1347, community is not just shared labor and shared joy. It is shared breath, shared touch, and shared affliction. If life in your village is unclean, life in war strips away even the illusion of order. When armies march, they carry not just weapons, but disease, rot, and the filth of hundreds of bodies crammed together without rest. A soldier's clothing is rarely removed and never washed. Wool tunics and hose stiffen with sweat, rain, and blood. The padding beneath armor becomes a sponge of filth, holding in every parasite that finds its way inside. Lice breed in the seams until they move as one writhing mass. You itch constantly, but scratching only opens sores that fester in the damp. Food is a gamble. Bread comes hard and stale, often riddled with weevils. Meat is half spoiled before it reaches camp. The same knife cuts meat, trims rope, and scrapes mud from boots. Everyone drinks from whatever water can be found. Puddles, rivers, even the same ditches the horses foul. Soon the camp is gripped by the flux, unstoppable diarrhea that leaves men too weak to stand. The chronicler Froissart, writing of the 100 Years' War, remarked that more soldiers died of sickness than by the sword. It was not just the dysentery, but fevers, infections from small wounds, and hunger that hollowed the ranks. Even the strongest were brought low by the combined weight of filth and fatigue. Siege warfare makes this worse. Imagine being trapped inside the walls of a town or castle, Water supplies dwindling, food rotting, waste piling in the streets. The air grows foul within days, choked with the smell of open latrines and unburied dead. The defenders sicken faster than they starve. Outside the walls, besieging soldiers live in their own squalor. Trenches fill with rainwater, breeding flies and disease. Rats run freely through both camps, feeding on spilled grain, gnawed leather, and the flesh of the dead when it can be had. They are uninvited allies to the most feared weapon of all, plague. During a siege, the line between living and rotting blurs. Wounds are rarely bound properly, and even when they are, the same filthy cloth is used for many men. The pus and blood of one man mingle with the next, and sickness moves faster than the enemy's arrows. When the fighting ends, the survivors return home carrying more than scars. They bring the lice, the worms, the fevers, gifts to their families, to their villages. War spreads filth like wildfire, and its traces linger long after the banners are lowered. Here in the 14th century, war is never just a clash of armies. It is the meeting of entire ecosystems of disease and dirt, merging into something worse. If you could step outside your own life and see it from centuries ahead, you might wonder why no one fixed this. Why no wells were kept clean, why no one insisted on washing hands before childbirth, why the same filth cycled endlessly through homes, food, and bodies. But here in the 14th century, change is a luxury, and luxury belongs to other people. The first obstacle is poverty. A peasant family survives on the narrowest of margins. Every scrap of wood burned for boiling water is warmth lost in winter. Every bar of soap bought at market is a week's bread gone from the table. A second set of clothing costs more than most families see in a year. Even if you wanted to live cleanly, the cost would be beyond reach. The second is time. Your life is dictated by the demands of the land. The seasons are unrelenting. Plow in spring, harvest in autumn, tend animals year-round. Washing clothing, boiling water, scrubbing floors, these are hours stolen from the work that keeps you alive. Dirt waits for no one, but neither do crops or hungry mouths. The third is ignorance. Not willful, but inevitable. No one you know has seen a world where things are different. Sickness is as natural as rain. Death from infection is as expected as the turning of the year. You do not know about invisible causes, only visible effects. You boil water if it tastes bad, not if it looks clear. You wash wounds when they stink, not when they are fresh. The very idea that tiny creatures could live in your blood or water would sound like superstition. The fourth is authority. Lords and clergy see no profit in changing peasant life. The Lord needs your labor, not your health, so long as enough of you survive to work the fields. The church speaks often of purity, but its focus is the soul, not the skin. Monasteries may have clean water and better hygiene, but they do not share it with the villages beyond their walls. Even when better practices exist, they rarely spread. A community might discover that a certain herb heals wounds faster, or that keeping waste away from the well prevents fevers. But such lessons are passed by word of mouth, fading or changing with each telling. What works in one place might fail in another, and without understanding why, the knowledge dies with the people who held it, and so the cycle continues. Not because no one cares, but because caring cannot overcome the weight of survival. You accept the dirt because fighting it costs more than you can pay. You accept the sickness because your mother did, and her mother before her, and no one knew another way. Here in 1347, change will only come when the very foundations of the world shift, when wealth, knowledge, and authority meet in the same hands, and the will to act is strong enough to defy centuries of habit. Until then, you live as those before you lived, in the constant presence of filth, because the cost of escaping it is greater than the cost of enduring it. Despite it all, the dirt, the hunger, the sickness, you and your kind endure. You are the children of survivors, and if you live to see your own children grown, they too will carry that legacy. Survival is not just an act here. It is a skill honed against every cruelty the world can muster. Your immune system is forged in constant battle. From the moment you draw your first breath, you are surrounded by threats. In the milk you drink, the air you breathe, the hands that hold you. If you survive infancy, you grow into a body that can carry parasite loads that would hospitalize a modern person within days. You learn to work through fevers, to walk on infected sores, to bear the weight of hunger without collapse. The names of people like you rarely enter the records, but every now and then, someone leaves a trace. Guillaume de Montfort hauling water from the W River, Marie Ducy scrubbing herself raw for Easter, Agnes the soap maker selling what she could not use, Isabella Ferrum sitting in church with her hair alive in the lamplight. They are fragments of a story told not in grand battles or royal decrees, but in the quiet persistence of ordinary lives. You would not recognize the world to come. Water running clear from a tap, heat summoned at will, soap in every household. The idea of washing every day would seem wasteful, even dangerous. To bathe in warm scented water without fear of fever would be a marvel beyond imagining. And yet, those things will come, centuries from now, built on the bones and endurance of people like you. Your descendants will not remember your name, but they will inherit the strength you kept alive. The line from you to them will be unbroken, woven through years of frost-bitten winters, summers thick with flies, and generations who lived in the shadow of disease without ever seeing its cause. In the still dark morning, the rooster crows. Your mother coughs again, her breath rattling in her chest. You rise from the straw, scratching at the bites along your ribs, stepping over the goat in the corner. The air smells of damp wool, wood smoke, and the long, slow decay of all living things. It is another day in the 14th century, another day to endure, and so you do as your parents did, as their parents did, until one day far in the future, someone will stand in a clean room, turn a tap, and think nothing of the clear water spilling into their hands. They will not know the price you paid for that miracle, but it will be written quietly in their very existence.